I am Devin Deal. You can find me on Twitter at Devin Deal. Mostly Bear stuff is all you know. Starting to get a little back into writing, so just a little tease there, getting a couple things out and ready. But as always, got some more guests here, or not guests, but actual hosts of the show with me. So in the top right corner, the man himself, Jay, at FantasyJ77 on Twitter. How are we doing tonight?
Good, brother. Good, brother. I'm really excited to see a football game on a Thursday that one team should score more than 12. There's a high probability of a touchdown from both offenses.
Right? I would think Jeff Bezos, I guess he's not a part of Amazon anymore, but Amazon is probably not going to be too happy with their $8 billion investment the last couple of weeks of the quality of games they've had.
Yeah. If I was Amazon, I mean, even if I was working in the warehouse, I'd be pretty pissed that my name was just
right. And having the bottom, Brian at Vandegrad. It's good to see you, buddy. How are you doing today?
Good, Devin. Good to see you too. Like Jay was saying, hopefully we'll get a little bit more offense. I'm excited to kick off week 7. I've had a couple of decent fantasy weeks the past few weeks after starting the season horribly. So my teams are still holding on, and hopefully everybody else's are as well. And we got some injuries and all kinds of excitement to talk about tonight.
Yeah, and with that being said, let's just go ahead and get into it. So let's go ahead and recap. From week 6. Just some of the highlights we want to hit on here. Jay, what's one highlight or newsworthy note that you want to discuss?
Man, I tell you, I expected, just by watching the first couple of games this year with Philadelphia, to actually put a beat down on Dallas, and it did not happen that way. They ran out to a huge lead on them to start with, and then a lot of that was Cooper Kupp with his 3 turnovers. I'm sorry, Cooper Rush with his 3 turnovers. So that was kind of a wow moment. I expected him to have at least 1 turnover. I mean, that Philly D is pretty stingy. But the other side of that too was, Chauncey Gardner was injured in that game and decided, what, screw this, I'm coming back in, and they got another pick. So I was surprised to see Philly not look as good as I thought they were going to. I wasn't surprised in the outcome. I thought Philly would win the game. But, man, Dak's coming back, so let's see what that offense is going to look like this next week. But that was probably one of the biggest surprises for me. Of course, I could hit the low-hanging fruit here and talk about how bad my Bucks looked against that vaunted Pittsburgh D that they have. But, we shall see what's going to happen down there in Tampa. But, yeah, I think that was the biggest one for me.
Yeah, definitely. That's I think, like you said, I kind of expected the Eagles to take over and win that game as well. And they got off to that big lead, and it looked like they were off to the races. And then it looks like Dallas kind of missed it. They really couldn't counter those adjustments. So they still came out with the win. And no one got hurt. They're on a bye this week, actually. The Eagles are. So there's a lot of teams on bye. We'll be getting into that here shortly. But Brian, any news and notes you want to get to from the weeks past?
I didn't get a chance to watch as much football as I sometimes do, but I still kept up with it as best I could. My wife and I were at the beach in Destin, Florida, so we didn't catch quite as much. But I guess the other big game of the week was the Bills getting a slight revenge midseason. So never a bad thing if you're a Bills fan.
Yeah, I was I was in a lot of DFS leagues, had a lot of exposure to that game because I thought it was going to be a lot more high scoring than what it was. So didn't end up doing too good in the DFS side of things, but man, the Bills look just incredible this year, man. I mean, they just aren't stopping. I know they dropped that one loss, but they look really good. I mean, and speaking of the Bills, that's another team we got on bye this week. So let's just go in and hit these byes real quick. Maybe discuss some players. Obviously there's a lot of heavy hitting teams across the league that are on bye this week. So we got the Buffalo Bills, we got the LA Rams, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Philadelphia Eagles. So right there, just between those 4 teams, you basically have the top 4 wide receivers in the league with Diggs, Kupp, Jefferson, and AJ Brown's been a little. He's been falling off a little bit, but still, he's an elite guy there. So, what do you guys think? Do you have a lot of exposure in any dynasty leagues, anything, or have any bye week issues coming up with these 4 teams being involved?
Thankfully, I don't really have issues. There'll be some teams that won't be able to field a competitive team, but I've got pretty good depth. I mean, but you're definitely. I mean, you just mentioned the wide receivers, but you look at the quarterbacks, and you're missing Ertz, you're missing Allen,
right?
You're just missing a ton. I mean, obviously Stafford hasn't done much, but Cousins has done fairly well as well. So you're missing 3 top 10 quarterbacks as well. So I'm looking forward to some of the DFS tomorrow with, when you count in those 4 teams on bye, plus then you've got some exposure tonight and always on Sunday and Monday too. It's it makes it a little more difficult to fill some interesting lineups for DFS. So.
Oh yeah. So somebody said in one of our chats, 2 weeks ago, maybe it was, bye weeks are about to separate the men from the boys kind of thing. So if this is only the second bye week of the year. We only have 4 teams on this bye week. We still have another bye week later on coming. I don't know if it's next week or the following week, but there's going to be 6 teams that are on that particular bye week. Well, just this bye week alone with these 4 teams, we have 24 fantasy relevant players just on offense. So if you play IDP, you can go ahead and triple that number. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is an astounding number when you think about it. Like you said, with the wide receivers and with the quarterbacks. But don't forget Devin Singletary, a Cook, you can throw in a Sanders because, I mean, he's playing some damn good ball. And then you throw in the tight ends as well, at Dawson Knox. You got, Higbee's been playing some damn ball this year.
Yeah,
all of a sudden, Allen Robinson is not getting the target, but so Higbee's getting, 45 targets already this year, something along those lines. So, yeah, you got some, and then of course you got Irv Smith, and then Dallas Goedert, who's last week was not the greatest week for him, or maybe the last 2 weeks weren't, but he was showing out in the first 3. So, yeah, it's gonna definitely separate the men from the boys this week.
Definitely, I got a league, my home league with a bunch of my buddies. It's actually a 2 quarterback league, not a super flex, and I have this is the players I currently have on bye on this team. I have Josh Allen, Sanders, Diggs, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and Goddard. So I was real heavily involved in these teams. I can still field a team, luckily, but this bye week's going to hurt.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, playing like 3 defenses then, because I mean, good Lord.
Yeah, it's pretty deep league, but there's only 8 of us, so there's a lot of good players around. It's the only 8-player team I'm in, but yeah, so then, we got some other stuff going on. We got Tua set to return this week. That's another big storyline there. The trade deadline is fast approaching. It's 2 weeks away. So what are some players you think might be, in for a new destination here? Because, a lot of the times the NFL trade deadline is pretty lackluster. It's not like the NBA where you get a lot of, last-minute trades, stuff like that. Even baseball, I think, has a better trade deadline than the NFL usually does. But I think it has picked up a little bit in the last couple of years. I think teams are more open to players who are on the an expiring deal, trying to move them. Younger pieces they're just not happy with moving them. So, Brian, who's some players you got your eye on that you're hoping for maybe they get a change of scenery here?
Well, one thing about it, like you said, it's not usually as exciting as the other leagues. But that being said, it's almost even more difficult to project because typically speaking, you can identify your buyers and sellers and all that, like in baseball, especially. I'm not as quite. I like the NBA, but baseball, football are more my gigs. But that so it's more difficult. But with Carolina already firing their coach and Robbie Anderson already being moved to a team playing tonight, then the Cardinals and. For me, it can make logical sense to move CMC and also who else was I thinking of? I mentioned earlier CMC and
DJ Moore.
DJ Moore. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can't always predict. It's like throwing a dart, but those would be a couple interesting names to keep an eye on, I think.
Yeah, there was an alert to come out earlier from Rotoballer that had and I don't know how much I like this, but they had San Francisco as the lead candidate to get CMC. The reason I don't know how much I like that is we know what San Francisco does with running backs, and then they get injured. Well, we already have a not going to say he's injury prone, but somebody that has previous injuries in the past. And this year, in that offense with no offensive line, in my opinion, that offensive line has been garbage with no quarterback. He's done pretty damn good. Are they paying him too much? I don't know why they would want to get rid of him. I'm sure some Carolina fans are going to be a little pissed, in real life football. But as far as fantasy goes, man, I think I'd rather see him in like a San Francisco behind that offensive line, that they have, especially with the other weapons, the young weapons they have, on the outside, and then Juszczyk, somebody that can block for him. He's going to be able to catch passes from Jimmy G. Man, that'd be a nice fit. But how much is it going to cost San Francisco? Is San Francisco going to get in that mindset of like the LA Rams did for winning their championship? F them picks, picks, give me the ring kind of thing.
Right.
That's what it's all about. So I'm sure San Francisco fans would be happy to hear and see that happen. So,
oh, yeah.
But
I do want to touch kind of like a really crappy dynasty team. At some point, you just got to break it down, try to sell for draft picks, and move on. Cut your losses. I mean, obviously, nobody wants to get rid of CMC, but you got to get rid of him at some point, perhaps. I mean, there's no guarantee, but there's just nothing for Carolina to build on for moving forward. So,
that's one thing I really don't understand why a lot of NFL teams haven't been more aggressive, especially on players on expiring deals when it comes to this. Like, being a Chicago Bears fan, last year, Allen Robinson, he was franchise tagged. We weren't doing anything. He was having a terrible year. I don't understand why someone like that is not trotted out there. Get what you can out of him because they're walking in the offseason, which is exactly what he did. And we have the same thing this year. David Montgomery's in the contract year. There's some teams that could possibly be in on that for a running back. And I just know they're not going to end up making a move, which is just really frustrating as a fan because it's like, why wouldn't you want a fourth or a fifth or something instead of letting some of these players go free? But I did see actually on Twitter that apparently, I don't know how accurate it is, but that the Packers are actually pretty involved in Claypool right now. If he's available, they're trying to get in on that, which that would be awesome for a lot of different reasons. Because Claypool, I think he's a good receiver. I think pairing him up with someone like Aaron Rodgers, it kind of fits his style pretty well. Nice big target, fast. But then that's also going to open up Pickens if something like that did happen, so where now Pickens is in the starting lineup, which he is in the starting lineup now, but he's actually going to be the number 2 option instead of the current.
You mean Dubs?
No, I'm talking about who did I say?
Oh, I thought you were talking about if he goes to Green Bay, I thought you were talking about Dubs over there. You're talking about Pickens in.
Yeah, the Steelers, and he's just going to move one more spot up on the roster there on the depth chart.
Is he number 3 now? I think he's number 2 now. I think he's ahead of Claypool.
Yeah.
So
Claypool's been getting a lot of targets the last few weeks. He's getting more. Yeah.
Being a Steelers fan, not to interrupt, but the guy I would be really excited for, Calvin Austin, coming off the injured list pretty quick as a rookie. Yeah, I think they would offer him some opportunities, to be honest.
Yeah, and I like Claypool. I actually had another landing spot for Claypool, but I do like the thought process there. And everybody out there in fantasy world needs to keep an eye on that. And truly,
sure,
if Claypool gets moved, Calvin Austin is going to be probably it's going to be Calvin Austin is going to be so hot picking up off the waiver wire. It's kind of like when Javonte went down and Mike Boone was hot, and that just hasn't panned out. But Calvin Austin is going to at some point.
I hope to God, as a Steelers fan, Calvin Austin's a little more hot than Mike Boone, but at least he's a rookie, and we didn't know what to expect from him. So.
Right on.
But yeah. I agree with your point, Jay. In terms of being very warm, yeah, the Austin freight train will be coming through for sure.
Yeah, and so I had Claypool, and I think it might even be Pittsburgh might be able to get more from is Dallas. Throwing him down there. Dallas with CeeDee Lamb. You could actually then move CeeDee Lamb on the inside and throw Gallup on one side, Claypool on the other, and then open up that middle with CeeDee Lamb. Don't know how well it would work out when with Washington, when he comes back in 4 years from now, but hey, we'll worry about it then. But I think they could more for him there. And I think it would fit the tall, that tall, big body receiver would be good down there in Dallas, a la Michael Irvin in the 90s kind of era.
Right. I think it's something a lot more teams are probably going to be considering moving forward now that we've seen the contract prices of these wide receivers just get astronomical. That you have Claypool who's a second-round pick on his rookie deal still. You have to make that decision, or are you going to extend him? And that the odds are, they draft receivers really well. The Steelers have been known for that. Like you said, they drafted Calvin Austin as well this year, like you guys were saying. So I'd be interested to see. I think if is going to get an uptick and possibly swapping out is going to be the wide receiver position. So
I know Claypool is year 3. I know most rookie contracts are 4, but I don't know if he's possibly one of the few that's on 3 or not. But
I think he still has one more
at the end of next year, no matter what. So
right, and that's that's attractive for teams as well. They're trying to take advantage of that if they have someone that's on the big contract, the $20+ million to add someone like that. So it would make a lot of sense all the way around.
Yep.
So
it would work well for both teams for sure.
Right. So let's go ahead and just dive into this game tonight. We got Saints at the Cardinals. Couple different storylines here. Hollywood Brown was officially put onto the IR today. So he is going to miss a minimum of 3 weeks. It sounds like he's going to miss 4 weeks, all the way up to 6. But being on the IR, that's a minimum of 3 weeks. And then we also got DeAndre Hopkins back for the first time all year, coming back from a PED. So we have some more who's in, who's out to get to. But let's just talk about these two players first and how we think they're going to impact players like Kyler Murray, stuff like that. So, Brian, why don't you take one?
This is a tough one for me. So you ask yourself, when he's on suspension, I think from past experience, D-Hop's not allowed to practice with the team, I don't think, during season. I saw that the over-under for yardage today was 60.5. So the question I would have, are y'all going over or under that line?
60.5?
Yeah.
I'm over.
I have it under.
I'm going under just barely. I see him in the 50s. But you got to keep in mind about D-Hop is last year, when he was with the team pretty much the entire season until I think he got hurt like week 11 or something. He played, but through the time he played, he was not even the leading receiver last year. Actually, the since departed Christian Kirk was. So
Right.
I don't know how much. I really don't know how much Diop has left in the tank. I think he'll do fine, but if you're expecting a top 12, top 15 projection, which some of the guys over at CBS Sportsline currently have him for week 7, I'm not sure I'm on that train at all.
Yeah, looking at last year's stats, so he ended up getting hurt in week 8, didn't come back until week 13, played week 14, then was hurt again 15 through 18. But in any of the games last year, he never crossed the 100-yard mark. So I think, kind of to what you were saying there, he was still getting targeted quite a bit, but he was kind of not the same player that we had saw maybe even the first year there, and definitely not the same player that we saw with the Texans. So I think 60 is a pretty solid number. I think it's doable. That's about what he was around every game last year. He had 83, 54, 67, 55, 53. So he's right in there. So that's a pretty good number to put it at. So, Jay, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm going to take the over. And reason being is it's been 10 months since the man's been on the football field. And you are correct. He could not, with his suspension, practice with the team. But that doesn't mean a damn thing about him practicing, whether it's Call of Duty, Madden, whatever with Catherine, whatever he wants on his own time. I think with going back to what you were just saying, though, he played week 1 through 8 last year. They were 8-0 when he got injured to start. Right. So, and then he's out for 2-3 weeks, and then comes back for one game, gets re-injured. I think he pushed it too much because, trying to get on the field. Well, that's what they all want to do. We've seen that this year already with certain players, get concussions or whatnot and want to be right back on the field. They're football players. That's what they want to do. If he would have just taken the time, possibly would have been back for a playoff run, maybe, better. But there was a stat that I saw today with Kyler Murray and D-Hop the last 2 years, including this year. With D-Hop on the field, they are 8-2, and with him off the field, they're like 2-9 or something along those lines. I can't remember the exact number, but it was polar opposites, right? His touchdown numbers, Kyler Murray's passing touchdown numbers were 20 with D-Hop on the field to 11 with him off the field. That's a drastic number as well. Yes, Christian Kirk was there, but, hey, Rondale Moore can play that same position as Christian Kirk. You also got Robbie Anderson coming in, which, what's his name? Kingsbury said he was going to be on a pitch count. He's probably going to play 10 to 15 snaps.
Right.
So, going to, not jumping ahead, but going to a start sit, I wouldn't be starting Robbie Anderson this week. I want to see what he's going to do with those 10 or 15 snaps. And those 10 or 15 snaps, he could get 2 touchdowns, and I'll get burned on that. But I'd rather not have him in my starting lineup getting me 0 on 10 or 15 snaps and have him, as Jamie in the chat would say, have him on my bench, get me 40 on the bench, and get me 0 in the lineup. So,
right.
But I do think D-Hop, and again, we'll get to this later on with one of our bets. I think D-Hop gets in the end zone as well tonight. I think tonight is a night that Kyler Murray gets back to being what we thought Kyler Murray was before he did this 4-hour, a day practice or 4-hour a week practice thing. So I think tonight will be a big game for Kyler Murray with D-Hop.
Right. And speaking of Jamie, says, "What's up, guys?" So howdy, Jamie. It's nice to see you on here. And he's also agreeing with you there, it looks like, Jay. So true. So, yeah. So, sticking with this game, like I said, we've already kicked off a handful of storylines we wanted to hit on here, but let's go ahead and dive in. There's been some last-minute news as far as who's out that will affect your lineups if you have them. So, for the Saints, Landry, Lattimore, who's not really fantasy relevant, but it is a big key to the game. Thomas
he's not fantasy relevant unless you're playing in an IDP league.
Correct. Yeah.
He is fantasy relevant to the Arizona offense.
Right. That's a big loss for the Saints, man, because he's a lockdown corner. He's very good. But then also with the Saints, we got Thomas and Troutman out as well. And then flipping over to the Cards, this is where the big news just came in. James Conner has officially been ruled out, so Eno Benjamin is going to get the start again. We got Williams, who's already been ruled out earlier in the week. So really, Eno's about a 3-down back again this week, which he didn't do great last week, but should be getting the most of it. As we said before, Hollywood is on IR right now. So that's another player that's going to be out. So with all these injuries, Jay, who do you think is going to be able to take advantage? Is that where you're thinking the Lattimore being out? That's why Hopkins is going to have a bigger game?
Absolutely, I do. And I just checked over on NBC Edge, thanks to Brian, and it looks like Chris Olave is in and the number 1 target for tonight for the Saints. So that should be good for them. It should be definitely good for him.
Right.
But being the only guy on the field now. But yeah, no, that with Lattimore being out, the Saints would put Lattimore and lock down one person, just like we saw with the Bucs, and that's why him and Mike Evans get in it every year. Twice a year they go at each other. He's a lockdown corner. They take out the number 1 guy. So if with Hollywood's injury and D-Hop, there's nobody for him to cover other than D-Hop, and now he's not going to be there. So D-Hop may have a little bit more room to open up and get some separation for Kyler. So, yeah, that's exactly where I was going when I said that earlier about D-Hop going over 60.
Yeah, it's definitely a little more compelling when you look at it that way, that he's going to have, I can't remember who their other – I can see the number. It's number 7, but I can't think of his name. But cornerback that's going to be –
he's evidently not that good that we cannot remember his name.
Exactly. Yeah. So, Brian, we've already kind of hit on some of the guys as far as the running backs, some of the wide receivers that are out. Do you think this means anything for Zach Ertz? Do you think he's going to get more, stay the same? What are your feelings on him tonight for his performance? It's a pretty tough defense going against the Saints.
Well, what I read today, the Saints are pretty good, are very good against tight ends, and not nearly as good as against wide receivers. But that being said, Ertz has played every game. I expect Ertz to have. We'll get the prop bets a little later, but I'm gonna throw out a stat line like I did last week, and I was pretty darn close on a lot of stuff last week. Not to pat myself on the back, but I'm gonna go with Ertz, 7 catches, 65 yards, and a touchdown.
I would welcome that, as I am in a tight end premium league and I have Ertz, so that would be great.
Hang on. Say that stat line one more time for me.
7 catches.
Okay.
65 yards.
That's all I needed. Because the over-under is 4.5 on reception.
He'll be over that.
Yep.
And now we did miss one. Andy Dalton is starting quarterback. I do not know if Winston got named inactive, but Dalton's the starting quarterback, and I don't know if Winston's available in emergency or not.
Winston is active. Winston is active, and he is the number 3 quarterback, emergency quarterback for tonight. So he is active, but probably will not see the field.
So I'm going to bring up a controversial player. How about Taysom Hill this week? He's had some really big weeks. I know there's been a lot of points of contention in the fantasy community with him being last listed as a tight end, which he was almost looking at. Dalton was banged up in the last game, was almost looking like he was possibly going to start this game. So he's actually not. But what do we think about Taysom Hill's performance tonight? Jay, I'll kick it over to you.
It's Taysom Hill. I mean, he's either boom or bust. I mean,
right.
To be honest, it's very possible he could see 3 catches on 5 targets, for 20 yards and a touchdown, and then get 6 rushes for 10 yards and another touchdown. Who knows? And he could explode this week and be a tight end. Top 5, top 7 tight end. On the other side of that coin, Cliff Kingsbury was asked, how do you stop, what's your biggest worry? And he said, Taysom Hill. He said, how do you stop him? You put somebody on him and cover him and don't let him out of the backfield. Because even if he takes snaps as a quarterback, he can throw it over your head, or he can split 2 defenders running down the field. So, but at the same time, he can also throw 2 interceptions.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm not the biggest Taysom Hill fan. He's a hell of a gadget player,
right.
But he is truly boom or bust for me. I have him 0. I have 0 shares of him on any of my leagues. So I just don't look for him to do much. I think the Cardinals are going to have a hell of a game plan to, they may not be able to stop Chris Olave, and they may not be able to stop Andy Dalton. But the one person they're going to stop is going to be Taysom. They're not going to let Taysom Hill beat him.
Yeah, I don't really have any exposure to him in any of my leagues either. But I know the fantasy community in general dodged a big bullet this week, because had he been playing quarterback out there and starting in a tight end spot, I know a lot of people would have been really upset, and a lot of leagues would probably be imploding over that. So we kind of had some of that happen last year. So at least for this week, we were able to avoid it again. But yeah, Brian, go ahead.
With me on Taysom Hill and a PPR league, like our sleeper, most for sleepers, maybe all of them, PPR, I'm going Taysom Hill, double digits, 10 points or more. How he gets there, most likely it's a touchdown, maybe 40 yards total. But, he can always get a couple of receptions, like you said. It's really not that hard for him if he's active at all. If he has any activity in the offense at all, to get 10 fantasy points. I mean, it's really not. He didn't get them last week, but the week before he had, I don't remember 25 to 30. So he had dealt with injuries early in the season, but I've got him in a couple leagues. I'm starting him in part of them, not starting him in other at tight end. It just depends on what you got. Like I got Pat Freiermuth in one league I'm starting over, but then I've got Taysom starting over a couple of lower guys. So he's a mid-range, low-end, tight end 1. For me, top 12. So it just depends on what you got. You got to keep in mind those 4 buys sometimes play a part too. So You're really just saying he's a top 16 tight end if you wanted to be a tight end 1. So
Yeah,
4 teams on bye and 12 teams. So
yeah, it's not that hard to be a tight end one, last year or this year. It doesn't seem, you know what I mean? So you catch 4 balls and get 25 yards and you're a tight end one.
and or you score a touchdown, which with him, he can do it a lot more ways than just catch it. So that's the thing you've always got to keep in mind with him. So
I think Sleeper and every other platform need to change his designation from tight end to only flex. He should only be allowed on a flex.
Right. Just flex player.
Yes.
Kind of like, when they switched like defensive end to edge a couple years back, it's just like, just flex.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it looks like we got a comment here from Jamie as well. He says he has Ertz as a top 5 tight end this week. So seems like we're all pretty high on Zach Ertz. Let's see if he can capitalize on that. And looks like we actually have another comment here. Looks like a shout out to Jay. Says that blue looks good on you, Gator.
Yeah, I might have to become a Giants fan there, Dano. My Bucks aren't looking that great, so yeah, I might have to. You say, hey, send me some of that New York garb, and I'll wear it. I'll dance for it. And I want D League right on the side too.
I think for the younger crowd, that's called swag these days. So.
Okay, I'm using the 2000s verbiage. The 2020 verbiage is swag. Okay. Oh no, it's not. That's the 2010s. Yeah. The new verbiage is drip.
There you go.
There you go.
Give me some drip.
All right. So before we get kicked off into the stock up, stock down part of the show, got an ad read here for you. So Underdog Fantasy promo code is the same, GF2, and you get a deposit match up to $100. So go to Underdog Fantasy, use GF2 as the code, and you will get a deposit match up to $100. What a great deal, guys. Make sure you take advantage of that. And with that being said, let's get right into stock up, stock down. So, Jay, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Man, stock up this week has to be K. Dalton. And I'm going to my Bucks for this for one reason and one reason only. It seems like Tom Brady really likes this rookie. And, we all say Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, they don't like rookies. They don't like rookies. Well, you're seeing Aaron Rodgers play with one hell of a rookie up there in Green Bay. When you looked at the last 3 weeks with K. Dalton, 2 of those weeks with Cameron Brate getting hurt and going down with what looks to be a severe concussion, similar to what Tua had to start with. 2 weeks ago, K. Dalton had 94% snap share. Last week, it was down to 56. But it was 56 after Kate got hurt. So he basically played the rest of the game. In those 2 games, 10 targets, 8 catches, 66 yards. If he'd had 1 touchdown in there, he'd have been a top 10, or a tight end 1. You go back 3 weeks ago against Kansas City, 67% snap share. He was 3 catches on 4 targets for 29 yards. Tom Brady is starting to use this guy. That's what you want in a rookie, especially in a tight end where we have no idea from week to week what tight end to play. K. Dalton has got to be a stock up for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That was actually my pick last week that I wasn't able to give when I was having internet issues when I was at the airport. But yeah, I really like that pick as well. He's been trending up. Brate actually went down again, like you said. So looks like he's going to be the guy going forward, at least for a few weeks. And even so, I think he's just going to take that job over. Brate, we know what he is at this point in his career. So yeah, K. Dalton definitely way up. I'm actually going to stick with the tight end position here for my stock up, which is Greg Dulcich. So it was his first game back from injury this preseason. When he came out swinging, Albert O was actually a healthy scratch. So he was the only guy on the field. He had some missed opportunities as well. There was some plays he was right open in front of Russell Wilson where he missed him. But, first game back, everything like that, there's a lot of, kinks and everything to work out, getting adapted to the offense. But coming out to a 71% snap percentage, I think kind of shows you what they really think about him. They didn't ease him back in the offense. He was the guy, and he came out, scored his first career touchdown. So I think, the writing's on the wall there, especially with Albert O being a healthy scratch. That was incredible to me that he was a healthy scratch. So if you're in a tight end premium league, Greg Dulcich, if he's available, he had a lot of, off-season hype around him when they drafted him, but everyone was still kind of on the Albert O train, myself included. But it looks like it's Greg Dulcich's job going forward.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I just had to go back and look at the stats because I was like, yeah, he was pretty daggum involved last week, with the snap share and all. And I know it's Russell Wilson and all, but dude, he only had 3 or 4 targets, 3 targets, caught 2 of them, 1 of them down, so hey, and he was probably I don't know where he's going to end up showing up, but probably a top 15 tight end anyway. So no, that's a great pick. I liked him coming out of college when he was coming out of UCLA. I think he was undervalued coming out. And we're gonna see him take over the Albert O. Albert O is probably done that. I mean, you got to think he's got to be done, right? So
yeah, Albert O's droppable in my opinion, even in Dynasty. I mean, barring him getting traded anywhere. I mean,
unless you're deep and you can stash him,
right?
It's the bottom of the barrel when you're healthy scratched. I mean, you can have bad weeks and be on the field, but when you're actually healthy scratch, your coach is basically saying, "Sayonara, pal."
Yeah,
that's never good. It's hard to bounce back from that kind of thing like Albert O just had. So here's
somebody you could compare Albert O to, just probably maybe in draft capital as well as position. OJ Howard.
Yeah. OJ Howard definitely never lived up to his first round talent, coming out of Alabama.
Well, he got hurt, but I mean, it was still one of those ones, then he just never got back on the field.
Right.
Whatever Cameron Brate was, a 5th round pick out of Harvard. This Harvard player is better than an Alabama player. That's what
and I thought for 1 week he might be having it in 2022, and he disappeared as fast as he appeared. So.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
All right, Brian. So how about you? Stock up.
Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit and go with 2. I've got Kenneth Walker and Miles Sanders as my 2. Finally, I hate to see Penny go down the week before last, but Walker got his first career start and had 97 yards, I believe it was, and a touchdown last week. He's not going to be available in most leagues because they should have already had their waiver as last week. But that being said, he's definitely stock up. And my primary one was Miles Sanders. They're on bye this week. But last year, he was running back 44, I think it is, in PPR leagues. And right now, he's running back number 9. He had no touchdowns last year, and he already has 4 this year. And he's got, I believe it's 105 carries for 485 yards. I'd like to see him get a little more involved in the passing game because he's fully catchable. He's fully passable as a receiver too. So I'd like to see him a little bit more involved. But the Eagles' offense has been really dynamic. So those are my 2.
No, I like that a lot. He was on my list for bounce back player this year just because, to go an entire season getting the amount of attempts he had at the goal line, just the amount of attempts in general last year, to not come away with a touchdown was pretty incredible. So, he's always fighting there with Jalen Hurts and, the 3 other running backs that they like to swap in and out. But, I think that's he's the 4th leading rusher in the NFL right now as far as yardage goes. So he's having an incredible year. A lot of people just so soured on him. It doesn't really matter what he does. Kind of seems like people are willing to trade him away pretty easily. So if you have something, send out an offer, see what you can get out of him. But I like that pick as well.
At the beginning of the season, a 12-teamer, I got him. I think it's either round 5 or round 6. So with Jonathan Taylor being hurt for the last couple of weeks, he's become my RB1 until Taylor comes back, which isn't a bad spot to be in. So
yeah, and as far as redraft goes, that's actually one of the few hits out of that running back dead zone that everyone was talking about this year because you had a lot of players in there that have not panned out at all. And him being, number 4 rushing leader as far as the yardage goes right now, can't ask for anything better than that.
Well, yeah,
I was lucky enough to get Walker in the 9th round. So
when you got a player sitting there coming out on camera and saying, "Do not draft me in your fantasy,"
right.
And then he goes off. He's like, "Yeah, I told you not to draft me."
Right.
I'm just doing what you said, boss.
Yeah. It always reminds me of like JD Drew, where he was just always just like, or not JD Drew, that's baseball. But what's his name? Running back for the Jags.
MJD. Maurice.
MJD, yeah, Maurice Jones-Drew. Yeah, there's JD in there somewhere. But yeah, he always had one of the people to draft him, which, speaking of that, we'll get into stock down here in a second, but did everyone see Saquon Barkley commit the fantasy sin last week and had an open touchdown to run into, and he went off at the 1 yard line, kneeled it so the clock could keep running? That's the price you pay. I mean, it's a cardinal sin as far as us fantasy players go, but when the team's looking for a win, you got to do what you got to do. But yeah, he was wide open and just took the knee at the 1.
Well, if you remember a few weeks back, I want to say it was the Browns were playing the Jets in that big shootout, and it was like crazy at the very end. Nick Chubb come out and said the exact same thing. He's like, I know I shouldn't have run run it in the end zone. I should have went down. And I was like, no, get it in the end zone. It's like, they gave you the win.
Right.
But yeah. We got to remember that as Bill Belichick famously says, every chance he gets, I don't give two shits about your fantasy team.
Yep, 100%. So Jay, let's just keep going around the table here. So who do you have for a stock down this week?
Well, I mean, for a first round draft pick 2 years ago, to sit there and all of a sudden get told by your coach you are no longer welcome, it's got to be Cam Akers. Cam Akers' stock has got to be. I mean, I think it started the fall last year, and then of course coming back right before the playoffs, it's kind of spiked back up, and then he's done nothing all year long. And evidently something happened in the locker room, is from what it sounds. I don't know. Don't have any inside information. Nobody has spilling the tea on that one. Look at there, Brian. See, got some little 2000 wordage in there. Nobody's spilling the tea on what's going on. But he's benched. Right now, he's RB 62. He's got 51 attempts for 151 yards on the year. Yes, he does have 1 touchdown, but he's played 5 games, and that's all he's gotten. And to me, it's just like it would be nice for him to get a new setting. Going back to what we were talking about earlier in some of these trades, it would be nice for him to move on. But how do you move on from a number 1 draft pick, a first round draft pick, or, second round draft pick, whatever it was 2 years ago, with all the hoopla that he came into the league with? I mean, at Florida State, he was good at Florida State with no offensive line. And he's not able to do that in the NFL. And I know the better players go through the NFL, and you've got, whatever 1% of college coming to the NFL. But man, he was so good in college, and it just hasn't panned out for him. And I don't know if it's the attitude. He busted his ass to get back on the field, and it just didn't feel like the Super Bowl run was, beneficial to him, or whatever the hell it was. But man, there's a problem in LA, and it's not starting with Cam Akers, but it looks like it's going to be ending with Cam Akers being out.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you invested in him in redraft, or if you still have him in Dynasty, we're hoping for a nice bounce back year this year, and have got everything but that, which is pretty unfortunate because he showed flashes. He had a couple games there where he was just going off right before that injury, and then coming back as quick as he did probably wasn't the best thing. But I know they were in the playoffs. He was trying to get in the Super Bowl. I'm sure as a player that's it's what you dream of as a kid. So he probably rushed himself back a little early. Hopefully it's not the end of his career, or at least as far as like a main starter, someone that can be, that type of level. But that's a really hard injury to come back from. We've seen James Robinson kind of come back from it. He was looking good the first few weeks, and it's kind of fallen off a little bit now too. So it's a really hard injury to come back from. But stock has to be way down for him. Like you said, he might not even, he might be healthy scratching the rest of the way if they can't trade him,
Let me ask you this.
My question with all that, the Rams in general have just looked awful as a whole, all the way from Stafford to Allen Robinson to Cam Akers. But if you look at the Darrell Henderson stats, they're not stellar either. So my question is, okay, you let Akers go, where are you going to for your success? I mean, I don't know. He had 13 carries last week. Is he completely gone? Maybe he is, but I have a question on the bye. They'll relook at things and see maybe what they've got. Maybe sometimes the grass isn't greener on the other side of the road. I don't know.
Well, there is a couple.
Just want to correct you real quick. He was completely out last week. He 13 carries against Dallas 2 weeks ago because they sat him. He was a healthy scratch last week.
And there is some
Akers
intrigue.
was healthy scratch this past week then?
Yeah. And when he got
Okay.
he was a healthy scratch week 6. Yep.
Yeah.
What was Henderson's stats?
I can
Not
look that.
good.
Go ahead, Brian.
While he's looking that up, there is also some intrigue. I don't really value this player that much, but that Kyron Williams from Notre Dame that was drafted, he's inching closer to coming back. He hasn't started yet this year, but he is a player that he had some flashes in college. I personally think he's undersized. He's a little slow. I don't know if he's going to be competing for the starting job there, but just another wrinkle to add in to where worst case scenario for anyone who has any piece of this, maybe this turns into a 3-headed monster there. Because I know Sean McVay did say that right now their goal is to trade Akers, but they're not ruling out that he could work his way back into the offense. So, but I think it's going to be pretty hard for any other team to take a swing at something seemingly might be a locker room headache. And then it's coming off that Achilles injury, like we said. So I think it's going to be hard for him to actually get a trade completed. So, looks like we just lost.
That's all right. I'm gonna answer his question anyway. His question was, basically, there you are, Brian. So Darrell Henderson last week played 71% of the snaps, was 12 attempts, 43 yards, a touchdown. He also got 3 targets with 2 receptions, and then Malcolm Brown was the other, and he got 7 attempts, 15 yards, and then 1 for 1 in receiving. And his 13 yards receiving. So yeah, they phased him out like that.
Yeah, but neither one of them did well. Maybe it is Kyron Williams' time. Who knows?
He'll be getting close. I'm sure they'll give him a look. Worst case scenario, we got to see what you got. I mean, they drafted him pretty late, but I mean, the worst thing I think about the Rams is they've traded away all this draft capital, which it's worked out in their favor. They won a Super Bowl for it, but they did not trade any of those assets away for any offensive line. And I think that's the biggest problem they're running into this year because they cannot run the ball, and they are having a hard time keeping Stafford upright as well. And we already know his elbow was banged up all offseason. He was on a throwing restriction. So, that's not looking good there for that line. Those lines are important. As a Bears fan, trust me, the offensive line is very important. You need one, and we don't have one either.
I'm trying to think. The OBJ rumor I heard last, I think, was the Chiefs. It wasn't the Rams. So, to me, if anybody's looking for a repeat, I don't think anybody is. But if they are, I don't see the Rams being able to circle the wagons like the Buffalo Bills used to.
Okay, Boomer. So I was going to ask you this question, Devin. You being a Bears fan, with the issues that evidently the Bears have with David Montgomery for whatever reason, and not already re-signing him or whatnot. And of course, Patrick Harrison's over here he's in the comments, and he's a Bears fan. So I'd love to hear his comment on this as well. So let's say the Bears do not re-sign. Is that me? Okay.
Not hearing anything. Yeah, you're good.
Let's say the Bears do not re-sign Montgomery, right? As a Bears fan, would you want to see Akers try to get into that lineup? If you didn't have to, if the Rams just cut him, if you want
maybe at the right price. Personally, I think Herbert's kind of shown enough there to be decent. The one thing that's bad about Herbert is he's a terrible run blocker. He just gets mowed over. It looks like Patrick says the same thing. Hell no, in all caps here. But yeah, I think he needs to go somewhere like if like the Falcons could maybe take a flyer on him. Just someone that needs like a running back upside. But the Bears, personally, I think Herbert's good enough to do what we're doing at the moment in this rebuild. And if we move on from Montgomery, maybe draft someone in 2023 or 2024. To put a little spark back there. But yeah, personally, I mean, I think it's a very select few teams that are even going to really take a shot at Akers if they really want to. It might just come down to he gets cut.
Yep. I agree.
All right. Well, then I am going to roll right into my stock down, which is Elijah Moore. So I actually wrote this before he requested a trade today. But yeah, he just, he's coming off a career low 0 targets last week, which I think is where a lot of this anger is stemming from. Seemingly being phased out. After his first 4 weeks, he was still pretty involved, had a lot of nice, snap percentages around 87%. And then the last 2 weeks, it's going down to 66%, 58%. So he's clearly being phased out. They have a lot of, they invested a lot with Wilson. They still have Davis there as well. They invested heavily at the tight end position. So I'm shocked. I really was, thinking he was going to take a step forward this year. But right now he's completely unstartable. I mean, in Dynasty, you're not dropping him, obviously. Redraft, I'll go ahead and drop him. I mean, there's no sense in keeping a hold of him at this point. The Jets did come out and say they are not going to trade him. We have already heard that plenty of times before, and then players end up getting traded. But for a second-year player, it's kind of hard, especially one that's kind of, had some production like he has in the league. Kind of tend to believe that they're probably not going to trade him at this time. So, yeah, for me, it's a big stock down for someone that I was really high on this offseason.
Yeah, I don't know how they could trade him. I don't know. I know this sounds stupid because he's only a second-year player, but I just pulled his stats, and I thought he did better last year, and I think the player that I'm thinking of was actually Devontae Smith. But I don't think his stats for a rookie, yes. I mean, he had 538 yards last year, 5 touchdowns. But this year, he's only got 203, through 6 games and 0 touchdowns. So I don't know what they're paying him. I can't remember. I think he was a second-round pick.
Yeah, he was a second-rounder.
So he's on a 4-year deal. He's basically in his second year of a 4-year deal. And they're not going to be able to recoup. Nobody's going to give a second round.
No, yeah.
So you're not going to be able to recoup that. I think the Jets would be stupid to come out and trade him. But hey, we've seen stupider things. Right. So, but I mean, as a player, I love the player.
Yeah, same.
Just don't know where he would fit in. Hey, send him to Cleveland.
I will literally take any wide receiver we've talked about on this show tonight on the Bears. Please, someone send a receiver to the Bears.
No, Bears.
So the question is,
Bears
does anybody truly know why Elijah Moore is being underutilized and all that right now, or no?
I don't, because at first I really thought it was just because Flacco was at the helm. I mean, we saw that connection with Wilson and him last year where I was like, oh, when Wilson came back, they're going to pick right up. He's going to have some deep ball catches and stuff like that. But I really don't know what's going on there. I mean, I know they drafted Wilson pretty high, and he was really involved. But, I mean, Zach Wilson also looks terrible right now. I mean, it was his first couple games back from his injury. But I think last week he was like 10 for 18. I mean, it's not like he's throwing the ball all over the field, I mean, 18 targets, Elijah Moore probably could have got a target, but, I mean, he's only completed 10 of them.
But that being said, sometimes, like in college, you get over-recruited like a Garrett Wilson. But Corey Davis is having a decent year compared to Elijah Moore. So,
right. And so I just
can't make that argument, really.
I'm looking at his stats from last year alone. The last 3 games before he got injured in either week 13, week 14, because he doesn't have any stats for week 14. But against Miami, Houston, and Philly were his last 3 games. He was 8 for 11, 4 of 8, and 6 of 12 in all of those 3 games, respectively, with 2 touchdowns just in those last 2 games. And then that's when he got injured, But he's throwing up just on fantasy points alone in a PPR. He's doing a 12, a 10, 11, 14, 13. So he's a good wide receiver too, roughly, later in the season. And then he gets injured. And then you look at his stats this year, and they're just nowhere close. Like his most targets on the year is 9 with 4 receptions. And there's not another one. He's got one at 7. But he has not hit 10 fantasy points at all this year. Of course, with no touchdowns, you're one-dimensional. So, yeah, he's just – I don't know. They're phasing him out. Hey, maybe it's a Cam Akers thing. Maybe he said something to Zach Wilson, or maybe, just maybe, Zach Wilson was talking to his mom.
We got Patrick saying something similar to that as well. Said Moore's mom rejected Wilson's pickup lines, and that's why he's not getting the ball anymore. And then, it looks like Patrick kind of agreed with there. Said he looked great in the Bears uniform, which I could not agree with more. And he's a nice run blocker.
you would have to talk to Justin Fields and make sure Justin Fields would be okay with his mom dating a teammate.
And we had actually Kyle stop in for a second. I'm not sure if Kyle's still on there with us, but he says, "Hi, everyone. Just checking in as I pulled James Conner out of a bunch of his lineups." So
I can guarantee you Kyle is over there scrambling right now. Holy crap, I got to keep
right? Yeah. And so let's just go ahead and kick over back to you then, Brian. We got our last stock down of the night, so go ahead and give us yours.
Let's just say I don't have – this my black shirt right here says champion across the front. Usually I have a Deontay Johnson jersey on. Right now, no. He over the last 3 weeks, 12 catches out of 24 targets, 90 some odd yards, and he hasn't scored a touchdown on the season. Not those 3 games. 6 games, no touchdowns. And I don't really blame Deontay. He's still the same player he was last year. But the quarterback play's been inconsistent. And this week, Pickett, I think, is going to play. I think he's been full practice, but can he clear concussion protocol? But doesn't really matter. And it's hard being a Steelers fan. At least we beat somebody's Bucks. But other than that, it's been a long year. So.
Hey, man, I'll take your guys' problems any day over the week over my Bears, all right? But so did you toss the jersey in the laundry? Is it hanging up or is it just completely in the garbage? I got to know that.
On the floor. What are you talking about?
It's in the shredder.
Wrinkled up.
No, I've still got it. He's still my boy. I'm just waiting for him to score a touchdown. I'm on strike until he scores a touchdown. So
right.
Yes. So like Kyle's over here talking about, got to take James Conner out of the lineup, right? And he's scrambling doing that. If this weekend Johnson goes and scores 2 touchdowns, I guarantee you Brian's over there with super glue suing that shit. So that shredder is like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this. Honey!
It'll look like that.
He's still my favorite player in the NFL, no matter what. But
it'll look like it'll look like those Bumblebee jerseys that they have, where it's all stripes or whatever.
Brian, all he's doing, and this is, I think this is a conspiracy theory because I think that Najee Harris is doing the same thing. Everybody's just trying to get their fantasy value so low that they're easier to obtain for us,
right?
Well,
problem is I've got him on most of my teams. My sell high would have been a long time ago.
My opportunity to play him so low is right now. I'll give you a third.
Exactly. The funny thing
Patrick is saying they're killing us Deontay. Go ahead. Sorry, I was just trying to give Patrick's comment in there.
Somebody yesterday we were talking about our stock drops. Elijah Moore was actually traded for in the league, if you believe that. So there you go.
Looks like Patrick is saying Brian would wear that glued shirt with a huge smile on his face. So
yes, he would. Yes, he would.
Exactly. No doubt about that one.
All right, guys. Well, we are rapidly approaching kickoff time, so we have a couple more things to get here to. So I'm just going to go ahead. Let's give our prediction quick. So, Brian, go ahead and give us your scores for tonight's game.
Cardinals 26-23. There's a 2.5 point spread, so I went just barely above that. And the over-under, I took the over. So,
Jason, what about you?
Yeah, I could care less about that point spread with Lattimore not being in. I went 31-13 Cardinals.
So a lot bigger of a blowout. Looked like you got the faith in Hopkins. We've already discussed that tonight. So, yeah, he's all aboard with the Cardinals here tonight, it seems like. I went Cardinals 23, Saints 18. Not sure how they're going to get that 18. Either missing some extra points. Maybe it's going to be an all field goal game. But wanted to switch it up and just get all 18 out there. So, but yeah, I think it seems like we're all in the Cardinals tonight. Take it from me. Andy Dalton is a terrible quarterback. I had to watch him last year for a long time. So, yeah, not too much faith, even with some of the good weapons he has there at the Saints, which, he stepped up pretty admirably. But I saw a stat today that actually Andy Dalton in his last 8 road games is 0-8. So if that puts a little more, swaying in your ways of who you want to pick at all.
Oof. Man, that's a bad stat.
Yeah, it's not great.
That's not good, Bobby.
Not great, Bob. All right, but then so let's do our parlays of the night here. Since we started off with Brian last time, I will reverse it, flip it over to Jason, and see what you think for the parlays tonight.
This was brought on. I want to say it was. I can't remember. I think it was Megan that brought it up last week and started asking questions about the different parlays and stuff. And then after the show, Brian was like, "Dude, we need to start doing this and adding this to the." So hey, we're adding it this week. This is week 1. We would have hit last week if she would have, or I don't know if it's a she, if she or he would have played the parlays that Brian and I just made up on the fly, it would have hit, with the anytime touchdown, overs and the unders. So I always thought about it. I'm like, you know what, D-Hop, anytime touchdown. And you can use this however you want to. I mix and match. I don't think I do this all as one bet. But D-Hop, anytime touchdown. Murray, over 32.5 rushing yards. I'm taking the over. Ertz, we talked about this earlier, Brian. The over-under is 4.5 receptions. I'm taking the over. Brian's taking the over on that as well. The other one that was kind of intriguing is Kamara, over-under 98.5 total. So rushing and receiving. And I want to take the over, but this one here, I'm going to take the under. That I want to take the over on that because it could very easily be like a 102, but there's a reason why there's a 98.5. I just, that one just kind of is like, might just be a hair more for me. So those are mine. D-Hop, anytime touchdown, over on 32.5 on Murray rushing. Ertz, over on 4.5 receptions. Kamara, under 98.5 total yards.
All right, Brian, how about you? You got some?
I do. Well, first of all, I'm going to take the over that Megan is a girl. I could be wrong, and if she is, if she is not, I apologize. That being said, my 2 legs would be, and keep in mind, I suggest we start this. It's called the Chrome Dome.
That's right.
Parlay of the week. That's very important. So I took Kyler Murray over a touchdown and a half. I'm okay if one of those goes to D-Hop, but I think he'll have at least 2 touchdowns. And the other half I like is Zach Ertz over 47.5 yards. So we both like Zach Ertz for 5 catches. Like I said, I've got him, I believe it was 7 catches for 60 yards, 7 catches, 65 yards, what I've got him for. So a touchdown.
Are you saying Murray's going to pass for 2, or is this over under on total touchdowns, passing and receiving? Because should
have clarified. Yeah. Over 1.5 passing touchdowns.
Okay.
So I'm okay with one going to Ertz and one going to D-Hop. So.
In the last 2 years, he has 15 games of at least 1 rushing, 1 passing touchdown. 15. So I like that. I don't know if I like it passing, but I do like it. I do like it as an over total touchdowns. The Ertz, I do like the 47.5 as well. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
With Lattimore out and the Saints being bad against the pass, I feel pretty confident with 2 touchdown passing.
Do I get extra anytime touchdowns if D-Hop catches both of them?
Then that'll leave me out on the Ertz train, but D-Hop could catch both.
I actually got one. I looked it up while we were doing it. I live in a state where this is not legal, so I'm not too familiar with it. I know, Brian, you got a lot more experience in this front, but I just looked one up. I'm going to take the over Kamara, 25 receiving yards. What do you guys think about that one? Yeah.
I think that's a slam dunk.
Yeah, if that's available, yeah, you got to smash that. That's he had 25 yards last week, so I mean, right there at it. But then the previous week he had 91. So
my whole thing is, I just hope Megan's watching again. Maybe she needs another parlay. So.
That's right. But you think about the Kamara one, he could do that on 1 catch.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, most players in the NFL can do that on 1 catch, but it's Kamara. He can have that on 1 catch and still get 6 more catches throughout the game. Andy Dalton, this. Loves to check the ball down. Loves to check the ball down. So he's probably going to see, I would guess he's probably sees 8 to 9 targets tonight, Kamara.
Yeah, especially, Troutman's still out
Yep.
This is out. There's a lot of people out, so I mean, he's pass game.
He could see 7 targets from Andy Dalton and 3 more from Taysom Hill.
Right, exactly. Over under Taysom Hill pass. That's what it should have.
Oh Lord, that's
all right, guys. Well, I think it's we're inching closer to that kickoff time. I believe it's at 7:10 or 7:15, so just a couple of minutes here. So I think we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Let everyone enjoy the rest of their night. I say it every week. Going to keep pounding this. Put your players in their actual positions. Don't put them in the flex. Leave your flex spots open. So before we do that, I'm just going to go ahead and give it to a roundtable. Let you guys know what we're kind of working on, what's going on here. So kick it over to Brian. What do you got going on this week? Any articles coming out, stuff like that? Go ahead and let people know.
Got 2 more pods coming out tomorrow night. I've got the DFS deep dive, and then over the weekend I've got the main show, and that's with FSQ.com, FSQC.com. Excuse me. And Gladys and I will be knocking that out of the park tomorrow night. So your DFS plays will be readily available. So that's my big thing tomorrow night and Sunday.
Awesome. We'll definitely check that one out. And Jay, how about yourself?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody that was in the comments tonight. I think that was awesome of you guys to throw out them questions.
Appreciate it.
Awesome to do that. Make sure you hit that thumbs up for us, though, please. Thumbs up, subscribe. Hey, go over to goingfor2.com. Get over in the Discord. Do all that kind of good stuff. Come check us out over there. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyJ77. You can find me here every Thursday night on the pregame, except for next week because I will be on vacation. I may pop in. Say hi to everybody. But you can also find me on Wednesday nights over there on Fantasy Intervention. Both of them are right here on YouTube as well. So, yeah, check us out. You know, we come in here to have fun, give you guys a little bit of advice, but try to have a little bit of fun with it as well. And hopefully it helps win some leagues and some games.
Definitely. It's what we're here for. Hopefully we're helping you guys out, making the best decisions you can. You can find me over on Twitter at Devin Deal. Like I said that right at the very beginning of the show, which I don't know if a lot of people are on, kind of starting to get back. I got an article in the works here, so might be seeing me pop up there. I'm going to try getting in the collaboration channel a little bit more as well. So you have to be on the lookout for that. I might be popping up in your guys' in your feeds there. But other than that, catch me back here next Thursday. Interact with me on Twitter, like I said, and we will see you all next week. Jay might be there, like you said. Depends how good the drinks are probably flowing, I'd imagine. But
the drinks will definitely be flowing. I may have to mute my sound a little bit.
Yeah, be like,
I don't need a message from Jeff going, we just got kicked off of YouTube because of your mouth.
Be like, oh, that's not a green screen in his background. He's actually right there on the beach. So, you know. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you all next week. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Dynasty Gambit.